Welcome to the third season of That's So Second Millennium, the Catholic Science podcast where we explore the fascinating borderlands between science and theology through realms of philosophy, human experience, and more. Welcome back to That's So Second Millennium, episode 100. I feel as if we should have prepared something with a little bit more fanfare for our 100th episode. It's a nice milestone. We've been doing this for quite a while, over 2 whole years. Since the very beginning of April 2018. But all we have is a conversation between myself and Bill about, well, it starts off with a good 15 or 20 minute meditation on neurobiology, the difference between the hemispheres of the brain, and developmental psychology. And I am the guinea pig or the test case, just narrating my experiences, exploring that aspect of my own psychology, and spirituality for that matter. And then we segue into, believe it or not, one of Bill's favorite subjects, talking about our inability to communicate across ideological divides. And eventually we get to discussing secular anxiety and the need for the atheist to play God, because we're human, we can't stop moralizing, and yet there has to be a reason why there's any justification for moralizing, so we have to find it within our own opinions, within our own selves, and the quest for control and the anxiety that leads us to, because of course we're completely incapable of it. So a meditation on the frontier between science and religion, the frontier that lies within our own minds, within our own thoughts, within our own feelings, within our own psychology. So there you go. Happy 100th. Thank you for listening.
How are you? How are you? That's the most important question.
That's right.
Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm doing better.
Yeah.
I've been through a big sort of emotional roller coaster in the last 24 hours in terms of,
really?
Working on this proposal,
Right.
mourning the fact that I misspent, 25 years of my life such that I'm in this position that I'm in right now.
Right.
And then
I wish you'd stop that.
Yeah. And then getting angry about it a little bit this morning, and then coming back to peace about it. I do a lot of, so, I mean, this is not, tremendously strange. I mean, we've had Darcia Narvaez on the show, so this is not too strange for us.
We have her lens. Okay, good. Yes.
We have her lens. So for my codependency, one of the main tools of that program is to engage in what we call reparenting. And so that's a process, involves, multiple components. One of them is to sort of seek out, internally, spiritually, one's loving parent, which one, had partly as growing up, but it was sort of, obviously, if you're in this position, something went wrong. Right. So you find that, and then you find your own sort of, inner child, the part of you that never had the chance to grow up because it never, was parented properly. Again, we've had Darcia Narvaez on the show 3 times, so we're not, or at least not breaking new ground there.
Right. Right.
So that's, and so I've been going, and one of the tools for doing this work is what's called opposite handwriting, where what the standard form of it is to treat your, most of us are right-handed, so your right hand as the the ego, more or less, because as much as we talk about how the problems of the ego, we can't actually get rid of it. And then you ask questions of your inner child, and then you put the pen in the other hand and listen, so to speak, to the inner child answering.
Oh my goodness.
So and of course there's, neuroscience behind that, the whole, left hemisphere of the brain operating the right side of the body versus the right hemisphere of the brain operating the left side of the body for most people.
Right.
But what I actually, and I tend to do this every Sunday. I take some time to do program work, and I do that specifically. So last Sunday, Easter Sunday of all days, I'm engaging in this, and at some point, my left hand, remembers. So I listen to a stable podcast, and so it was on some other podcast, not a Catholic podcast, not a conservative podcast. I certainly listen to a fair number of those, but one of the other ones, like either possibly Radio Lab or one of the ones that NPR puts out. It could have been Hidden Brain. Hidden Brain's probably the most likely possibly Radiolab that WNYC puts out, which is definitely, I mean, Radiolab is in my stable so that I can hear what I've probably discussed this before, but it gives me a window into what the semi-intellectual left thinks about things, which I suspect is kind of valuable. It's intriguing to try to listen to them, obviously believing that they're just, talking to people on the inside of their own, worldview.
Yes.
So their guard is kind of down, and that's helpful.
That is
so one of those anyway. So there's a book that one of those podcasts brought somebody on to talk about a book called Master and Emissary.
Okay.
Probably a somewhat obscure book, and it's actually, I haven't read it. But I remember the conversation. The conversation is really intriguing. The guy's thesis is that so what do we think of? Okay, Bill. So let me put you on the spot. You've heard of this whole left brain versus right brain stuff at some point in your life. What at this point, just putting you on the spot, pop quiz. What does the left brain do? What is the left brain good at?
My recollection from a conversation I had about this not too long ago is it's the less linear thinking side and the more kind of big picture side. Do I have that correct? That distinction.
That's interesting.
Correct?
So what I thought you would say is that the left brain is the more analytic and goal-oriented and logical side, and that the right brain was the more creative side.
Yeah,
that's certainly what I internalized over the course of my 20s and 30s hearing about this stuff.
See, yeah, I just might be confusing the two, but I think that is interesting. I wonder if it is that simple, though.
Yeah. So I mean, that's the question that this guy, the whole brain. I bring up the book because he was attributing to the right brain what you were attributing to the left brain.
Interesting. Okay.
So it's possible there's just been an inversion there. But it was, that was the point. And his thesis is that Western culture in particular has exalted left brain skills and left brain styles of thinking to our detriment, because really the right brain belongs in the sort of overall captain's chair, because the right brain has this ability to integrate across, it takes the bigger picture and it integrates information that the left brain feeds it. So this whole master and emissary is apparently a parable, so to speak, about the right brain is the master and he sends the emissary, but the emissary gets all big for his britches and starts, deciding that he knows better than the master, and and then we have a Mickey Mouse and Fantasia situation, and that he believes is an apt parable for a lot of our psychological and cultural problems today. That's
interesting.
So in any case, I'm remembering this. So let's close that parenthesis and back up to the previous level.
Okay.
So I'm having this. I'm writing with my left hand, and my left hand is remembering this. And there's a lot of the parenting stuff really is coming from my side. And then I put the pen back in my right hand so that with my left brain. Of course, that's one of the strange, fascinating accidents of why do the neurons cross somewhere near the connection to the spinal column? But in any case, so I'm my right hand, and my right hand is starting to write. I'm really the kind of. In fact, let me open it up here.
Yeah.
It's just a page or two back. Let's see. It's April 12th, Easter. And conversely, so this is my right hand picking up after my left hand has had its say. I have a great deal of Arthur, which is my name for my middle child, or my inner child. That's my middle name. I don't use it for anything, but it's always fascinated me because, why not? King Arthur, right?
Yes.
Over on my side, do I not? Perhaps I have more than half of him on my side. I'm the one who is pleading, earnestly trying to please, earnestly trying to be cheerful. Perhaps you are the master, and I am the emissary, the apprentice, the timid young hero in need of advice from my spiritual mentor. That makes a lot of sense.
Wow.
So I, have been having these strange little internal adventures. And that. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Well, which side? And let's go with the paradigm that you're talking about, left being the big picture, Oh
or the
no,
right,
left
right.
right is big picture, left is
Yeah.
linear.
The left brain loves to immerse itself
The
in a task and get, and just get into the task for the task's sake, and keep its head down and not worry
Yeah.
about things. When
Okay.
it's left to do it, it really does well.
So then, which side is the perfect emissary?
The emissary is the left brain. The left brain is the tool. The left brain is
Okay.
the craftsman. Well, I mean, yeah. It really
Yeah,
is
the
the craftsman on the
specialist.
small
Yeah.
scale. Yeah, it gets the job done. It knows how to turn the lathe. It knows how to, to get the parts all in order. But it needs direction.
Yes.
It
Right.
needs that wide. So logic is the tool. Logic
Right.
is the web that connects things. But logic can't tell you what your life should be about. It just can't. It's a category error.
Yes.
And yet we try to pretend that that's in some sense possible and the case. And the left brain flails around without guidance from the right brain, and certainly
Right.
without guidance from bringing it back to a Catholic perspective, without guidance from spiritual insight, from thinking about the last things. We try.
Right.
I mean, all of our distractions. I mean, that's the left brain trying to medicate itself because it doesn't know what it's doing, and and it's trying to quiet the right brain, perhaps.
That's
Who's
interesting.
realizing that we're pissing our lives away, and
Yeah.
just not attending to the important things, and yet we just don't know how. And then of course then that brings it back to parenting, because we do what we do to a large extent because that's how we're brought up, regardless of whether we like to admit it or not.
Yes. Does that feed into the proclivity of a mother or female being more prone toward one, and the male or husband or father being more prone toward the other side of the brain?
um I'm not up on research like that. It'd be terribly difficult stuff to do, because and the problem is this is really malleable stuff.
It is. It really is. Yeah.
Those are the tendencies. But for example, it's apparently a well-known fact that if you're missing a hemisphere at
Right.
birth, you will the remaining hemisphere will take over both halves of the body for sure.
Right. Yes.
What else that does to your cognitive and spiritual life afterward, I don't I haven't seen that longitudinal studies of
My.
what those effects are. But I mean, so the question of, it would be really difficult to unfurl enculturation from, yes, we probably have cultures that push women to emphasize right brain thinking more than men, and men to
Right.
emphasize left brain thinking more than women.
Right.
But that's so. I mean that, and there may be a genetic basis for that as well. There may be genetic proclivities in that direction, but gosh, those would be hard to unfurl.
Yes. Although I bet a lot of neurobiologists
I'm
make that
certain
part
they
of their
have.
study.
I'm certain they
Yeah.
have. And the problem is that it's so hard to unfurl that if you want an answer, you can find a way to get it.
Exactly, and probably the gender studies programs at colleges tend toward one answer to the issue, and I don't know, some other sectors or ideologies might tend toward another
Yeah.
answer. But
Yeah.
yeah, but everything becomes not weaponized, but ideologized. The thing that interests me is, and this was said by a speaker at the Center for Ethics and Culture annual event that's always so good, as I'm sure you remember. This one speaker said that our problem nowadays is that we're trying to be both relativists and moralists.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? We're in God, but we're saying that we are God. Somebody's got to be God, because we've got all these moral problems out there of good versus evil that have to be solved.
Yeah.
So, in the absence of God, I better play that role. Thank you.
Yeah. Somebody has to. Yeah.
Somebody has to do it, right?
Yeah. In the words of another piece of 12-step literature, it got to be awfully lonely sitting on that throne of God.
Right. Yeah. It's the line is used a few times in my favorite movie, Broadcast News, where the OCD a woman producer is talking to people like cab drivers in Washington and saying, K Street is busy this time of week, this time of day. So be sure you go around DuPont Circle instead of and the cab driver says to her, it must be wonderful, thinking that you know everything. And she's very authentically and with a grimace on her face, she says, "Oh no, it's very it's very hard."
It's
And,
such a burden.
she and what's a beautiful part of the
Yeah,
character is that
yeah,
she does actually feel and show that burden,
yeah,
but she can't. She has to accept it because she's a secular journalist who
yeah.
has to decide right from wrong and who
Oh
has
yeah.
to make a day efficient
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean,
and all of that. So,
it can't be surprising that anxiety has gone up, despite the fact that our actual physical security has gone so far down over the course of the 20th century, just because we're in charge. We're completely
yeah,
unequal to the task. We don't have any
yeah,
control.
yes.
We have influence. We don't have control.
No, that's right. That's right. And the problem now is that we are tending toward a kind of desperate move toward gaining control through tribalism, through groupthink, through social media communities that group us all together with people who think 100% like us,
Yeah.
and so we're trying to gain that control that we sense somebody needs to have, and we're not willing to surrender that back to God.
No. Yeah. I mean,
It,
it's I understand that, coming from a skeptical background myself. I mean,
yeah,
having spent, yeah, I was really young, but I mean, it's not like that side of me has ever gone away. I mean, I realized before we moved to this house, so I was something like 12 or 13, when I realized
hmm
that things weren't things. my, I disbelieved things because my internal pessimist refused to, hope for them. And
oh,
I realized intellectually that that's a terrible reason for anything. But
right,
that doesn't make it much easier to say no to that attitude.
yes, yep,
There's an entirely different kind of work that needs to be done there.
yes, yeah. Well, it is a healthy and almost necessary learning process for spiritual growth and perhaps for other kinds of mental and psychological growth at some point to realize what you can't do. And isn't there that great line from Rudy, the Notre Dame football movie?
Rudy.
Yeah,
I'm
where
ashamed to
he's
admit I don't think I've ever watched it all the way through.
oh Paul, oh
I know.
we
I'm a
gotta
bad,
yeah,
bad Notre Dame
bad
alum.
Notre Dame, right?
Such a
Rudy
bad
is
Notre Dame alum.
Ru-
Uh,
Rudy is in the basilica talking with a Holy Cross priest, and the Holy Cross. I guess Rudy is bemoaning his fate at the moment, and the
yeah.
priest says, "There's one thing I've learned in all of my years of being a priest, and that is that there is a God, and I'm not him."
Right.
Yeah, and so that is kind of an essential piece of growth. And I guess both atheists and theists, I like you folks, you and Pat Flynn. I got through about half of the discussion, by the way, and really liked it.
Well, it was only an hour and a
Uh,
half, so I'm grateful if you could spare
wow.
45 minutes
Yeah, no,
for
I
it.
think I did. Yeah, I got at least through 30 to 35. And yeah, the conversation was very good and free flowing. And um, uh, I think people would really enjoy. Now, was that, and that was released as one single bonus
Yeah.
episode.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Pat does some pretty
So-
long form conversations. So
Yeah.
I actually just
yeah.
posted something up on our webpage, a sort of, landing spot for Pat Flynn related people. Or actually, it's mostly to refer people over to his show. So I picked out, a few of my favorite episodes of his. Of course, two of those are where he's interviewing Stephen Barr. So,
Oh, marvelous,
he's
marvelous.
he's had Barr on his show twice, which is pretty cool. And he's also had Jared Zimmerer on there of Word on Fire, who comes from a bodybuilding background of all things. I'm like, that's fascinating. So I linked all those up there in a blog post on the main page of our own podcast, so people can see that.
Would that be a good place also to just plop a link to the Society of Catholic Scientists website, or you probably?
Yeah. Thanks for listening to this episode of That's So Second Millennium. TSSM's audio producer is Morgan Burkhardt. Our theme music, Igneous Grok, was composed and performed by Vin Marquardt. For my co-host Bill Schmidt, I'm Paul Giesting. Until next time.